And now we're going to talk about how the ship pipeline works and why all the estimates that people are making about how long it's going to take to get through this backlog, particularly for the larger ships, why that's probably the estimates that people are making is not accurate. And we're not going to go into detail about the pipeline. We're just going to show you what information CIG has shared. So you can go back and watch the videos yourself and look at the image yourself. They have made changes like we have talked about, but we're going to go back to when they first started talking about the pipeline to us. And
Dine shelf.
so the there's two videos that really sort of lay the groundwork for it, and then we've gotten little verbal cues here and there about the updates since there, things that they've changed. And so the first one, February 9th, 2017, was a Around the Verse. If you're not from that far back, Around the Verse is the predecessor to ISC.
Much
But they did,
quirkier, more fun, less formal.
yeah, less formal. So they did 2 episodes. This first one is 2 sections, but they the first part talking about the pipeline was the concept phase to gray box, and the second one was Around the Verse from March 30th of 2017, so like a month and a half later, where they did part 2, which is gray box to flight ready. And the big thing that came out of that, besides the details on how the ship pipeline works, was, let's see, this image. And this image, was referenced in the video multiple times. I want this to go away. There we go.
Because it's not listed here, I will
they're
note
going
the
through
green that says AD is art director. So you know.
Yep. Yeah. Oh yeah. They don't
CR
say
is
that.
obviously Chris Roberts.
Yep.
So for those that I don't care about Chris Roberts, look how many times his name is on this page.
Yeah.
Every ship you love was touched by him 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times.
Yeah. And I don't even think he's that involved anymore, because this was in 2017. And since then, they have gotten investors, they have a board of directors, and he's taken a much higher level view. And so I don't think he gets brought in
Floor time
as often as he used to.
I think he I think he trusts his John. I think he trusts John Crew a lot more.
Yeah, John, and the God, God bless whoever has to replace Paul Jones, because Paul Jones is a saint, and I love him in a completely platonic and way. Gavin Rothery, I think that CR trusts them a lot more, and I'm sure he probably gets presented on, hey, we've got this, these things coming out, or these are what's being worked on, but I don't think we get detailed. Chris walks over to the desk and you give him a little presentation on where things are, at concept final approval, gray box final approval, final approval from CR at every step of the way. There's with everything that's going on, CR doesn't have time for that. It's just not realistic. But 2017 was a much different time. The studio was a lot smaller. There was a lot less going on, a lot less moving parts. But this is basically the layout for what the ship pipeline is. And you can see, and I will put this image and the link to it. You can find this image on the SC Tools wiki. I'll also throw it in my Discord. It will be in the show notes. So if you want to find it, you can look at it. It's also referenced in the videos that we just talked about, which are also in the show notes. But things start with design, and you get the design brief with the writers, the narrative team, and designers trying to figure out, okay, what as far as ships go, what holes do we need to fill? And then, based off of the basic design, the design notes, it goes on to the concept phase where the artists are doing, generally starting out with 2D sketches, getting the shape language, the art style down. They also figure out what manufacturer it would be. They sort of get a little bit of lore going on as to sort of set the stage for why this ship exists in Star Citizen. And in this concept phase, it used to be just the 2D images and the drawings that we get. Now concept includes white box, where things are going into 3D art, 3D modeling, in order to get the full 3D shape language, the size and scope of the ship, the interior layout, where things are. But you can see that there's animation, there's tech design, all these different parts in here, which are illustrated by what we were looking at with the white box videos of the Nautilus. So that was white box, and that's why now when a ship is a concept ship and released as a concept sail, it's not just concept. The concept phase includes white box, so that way the information they give to us is much more concrete as far as the size metrics, as far as the component metrics and everything. And they're also able to show us a lot more about what that ship will look like versus just the 2D images, in order to essentially get us to buy more of them, fall in love with them more. That's why when with the Odyssey, the Galaxy, ships like that, they do those videos where they give you the full, essentially the tour, a lot of the time, in order to get you really hooked. And then gray box is where they're taking that rough 3D art, because you'll oftentimes see white box is very plain and a lot of just very plain geometric shapes starting out, but then it moves farther along in order to get more defined shape language, so that way you actually know you have a really good frame of reference of the size of things, especially for like hallways and stuff. And then in gray boxes where you get a lot more detail, a lot more greebling. That's where they start to put in that sort of stuff. It's still gray. It doesn't have any color to it. There's not really, there's a little bit of lighting, but not a whole lot. It's still very rough. But you're getting the modeling and the surfacing, so that way the ship becomes much more recognizable. And then when you're going into 3D art, and getting closer to final art, this would be sort of like the Lot Zero level, Lot Zero and then into final art, where Lot Zero, they talked about it the other day, where the ship is right here. This is the level of detail that you see. And, so that way we get the highest level of detail first, and then they work their way back, to, LOD 100, LOD 1000, which is basically just the level of detail on the ship at the various distances that you'd be viewing it from. So that way it's performant, and then you're also getting all these other passes through here as they're adding in this information, and detail, tweaking it, adding more to it, finalizing it. But if you're familiar with these things, you start to see when these things come in, and where they are as part of the entire ship pipeline. So it's pretty detailed. The biggest things that they've changed has been making it so that way when they do concept a ship, they include the white box phase. And some of the white box phases, some of the ships, when they go through white box, they get a little bit more detailed than others. But they do include the concept phase. What's that?
Like Lorville.
Yeah. Yep. Let's see. Close. Oh, I didn't mean to close that all the way. Whoops.
Aw. That's it. Presentation's over. Go home.
Yep. Yeah, call it a night. There we go. Whoops. There we go. All right. So, so you've got these two videos, which is where they go through and in detail. Throughout these videos, they go over that image I just showed you and explain more in detail about about what those different phases are and what occurs in them. What teams are doing those different bits of work. And it just, I wanted to include this quote right here. Let's see, we're going to scroll back a little bit. Because in summer of 2021, they did this ISC that looked at the hospitals being added to the standard system, but they also talked about what gold standard means when it comes to the ship pipeline. And I actually wanted to watch this because it's, at least for a few minutes, in order to get, a little bit of context about what gold standard means.
Let's shift gears now to spaceships, specifically Aegis stalwarts, the Gladius, Saber, and Retaliator, and find out what it really means to be the gold standard in a pipeline that is continuously evolving to this day and beyond.
The gold standard pass is what we are terming this current pass on the vehicles. We are implementing primarily cockpit button placement, could be button animations, making sure everything is symmetric, both character and item-wise, exposing all the ship items, lighting passes, material passes. Gold standard is finishing the ship to as complete a standard as we can with the feature set that we have right now in the game. The first ship that we put through this pass was the Aegis Gladius.
I was a little nervous working on the Gladius because it is like the Star Squadron, and I wanted to make sure I did a good job on it. And then also coupled with the fact that because Squadron are using it, I had to make sure that I didn't break anything with each submit so they can keep working on Squadron and still able to test and work on it. We started off with adding component hatches and a personal inventory. Gladius didn't seem to have any visible headlight source, so I went in and added some nice big headlights for that at the front. And then it was just with the thruster glows as well, trying to get them to look nice and read from a distance. Adding the fuel port on it as well. And then, just some geo optimizations and material optimizations and more stuff that you don't necessarily would see, but makes the game, more optimized and runs better.
So on the next ship, which was...
All right, so he's going to talk about the Saber. So let's skip ahead of the Saber. It's kind of interesting that they chose the Saber gold standard. I don't know if the Saber... Nazeris, do you know if the Saber is in Squadron 42? I have no idea.
I believe so. I know I've seen. I'm going to go look up now.
So let's watch this little bit about the Retaliator gold standard, because the gold standard for the Gladius isn't huge. I mean, they're optimizing the ship. They add components.
Yes, it is.
Oh, okay, sweet. They optimize the look and sounds, animations, lighting, everything with the Gladius. They added the things that weren't there before because they had the new features set, like John was talking about. So you've got the components now. You've got personal inventory space. Actual physical inventory space with the gun racks and weapon racks. They work on the switches, the UI, everything to bring it up to the current, best of the best standard based off of what they have. And obviously the Retaliator is a bigger fish to fry, because it doesn't just have a cockpit, it has a full interior that's walkable, it has larger components, it has a lot more function. And so this is the little talk about the Retaliator gold standard work, which you can see on the progress tracker, which we haven't gotten in game. Because why? Modularity. Doesn't work yet.
Saber gold standard process.
So the Retaliator gold standard is obviously a much larger task than the Gladius and Saber. Has all the same criteria of work, so looking at the cockpit, look at the components, adding all the things, checking everything's symmetric. But because it's got an interior, then there's additional tasks added. So the same work we do for the cockpit of the pilot has to be done for the turrets. The components that you can physically take out of the ship, can you physically take them out of the ship? Do the doors need to be wider, etc.? Now you've made the doors wider, do they still fit in the ship when they open? And we also took the time to look at the central room and thought, can we improve on this? We decided to remove the top and bottom docking collars and go for a side airlock, which also helps for docking because that's just a natural walking on transition. And then because we'd lost a lift on that side, we then realised we had to make the lift on the other side slightly larger to accommodate essentially 2 lifts worth of people. So then you've now just got 1 lift on that side of the ship to get in and a docking collar on the other side to get in. The thing that the Retaliator has is the customizable room modules, and there's a cargo module front and back, a dropship module at the front.
Seeing the white box, white box, gray box, and then
they were all brought up to
final
current standards. So when modularity comes on as a swappable item, they are good to go. That's where we're at with the first gold standard ships. Obviously going to go through all the ships, but we are going to focus on the ones that feature heavily in Squadron 42 first, and then we will roll on to your favourite ship afterwards.
So what did we learn this week?
Yeah, so the modules are done. The modules are done. They're to gold standard. The Retaliator is at gold standard. It's ready to go. The only problem is they can't move because that new ship is modular ready. They can't bring it into the PU because the PU isn't modular ready, and so soon TM. It is what it is. But you saw that the difference in the work as it went through that pipeline. That also includes bringing it up tech-wise. And so everybody, a lot of people, when we're talking about the resource management being a prerequisite for it, for the Retaliator, it's not. Because the Retaliator was brought up to the gold standard. So it has all its components. It has the resource network system built into it. The only thing they're working on resource network, resource management wise is the gameplay associated with it. The ship should be ready because the old pipe system, now resource network, resource management system, has been a part of ships for years now, like since 2018. And now they just brought last year they brought the the Retaliator up to that gold standard to include that system. So there's that bit. And let's see, where were we? Back to my notes.
Why is the F8 Lightning so good?
Yeah, right?
Is it the smallest
backup.
one-person vehicle with a turret? Is it the only one-person vehicle? Nope, the Hornet does have a turret. The F7A has a turret as well. Which also isn't in the Precision universe. Man, I would like an F8 without the front teeth. The front, sideburns things.
Yeah.
Oh, really cool.
So the vehicle pipeline. So we have, let me open up that other image because we didn't mean to close that one either.
Yeah, Hurricane is 2 people, by the way.
Yeah. So here are our unreleased ships. And here is the vehicle pipeline that ships go through. Now, granted, this is out of date, but it has evolved, but it functionally hasn't changed in a big way. They've, move things around. They've added things here and there in order to, they've made the process more. They've made the process more efficient. They've made the process more accurate. But a lot of people seem to think that the pipeline is so slow that they can only get one capital ship done a year. It'll take a year and a half, because in I think it was the August of 2022. Oh, dang it. I didn't grab that link. So in August of 2022, there's a quote from one of these all vehicle Q&As where John Cruz said, here, let's just, we'll find it. I'll pull it up because
it should be one of the ones in the doc.
I had it, and now I can't see it. I'm not seeing it. But I know how to find it really quick, because I've had to find it multiple times over the last few days to share with people who have been... Let's see. So people are very upset about the BMM potentially being shelved. I don't think it's going to get shelved. I think it will keep the skeleton crew, but they'll keep working on it so that way it will continue to make progress until they can ramp up production when we're closer to needing capital ships, to needing a trading ship, a big large scale trading ship. So let's see right here.
Wow, for like the modularity. Let's talk about the larger capital ships, the Idris, the Polaris, stuff like that. This isn't going to be a status update because there isn't a status update. The question is, what is needed tech and resource wise before we can start adding larger capital ships like the Polaris or the Idris
to the... shortly, but yes.
Yep. Sorry, no, this is running long, but we got lots of information to cover. Biker Scout, first time. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate you hopping in. We've got a little bit left on the Spectrum Pulse, but this VOD, of course, will be up on Twitch, and then I'll upload the entire video tomorrow on YouTube, and then over the next several days, I'll be uploading the individual segments as well.
Game.
There's a bunch of optimization work. Naturally, ships of that size, they have a cost to them, and as they are, like Idris and Javelin specifically, they are going into Squadron first and being adjusted to Squadron's needs, where they can be a bit more generous with performance than Star Citizen can. So aside from that, we're obviously somewhat at the mercy of those teams. We don't want to have the PU Idris and the Squadron Idris. Just to use a wild example that is not true. Say Squadron want to make the Idris 50 meters longer for whatever reason. We then have to take that on the PU side. So we want to be absolutely sure nothing else is changing on those ships before we bring them into players' hands, because otherwise it's a waste of time for both teams internally. From a gameplay side, we don't want them to just feel like, hey, this is just a ship that is big and handles slowly, and I sit in the pilot seat and I can fire all the Idris's guns from my pilot seat, but I move at 10 meters a second and I rotate at 5 degrees a minute.
Which is all it would be if we put it in today.
Yes.
It would just be like a big, fat, slow Connie.
Yeah. Things like resource network are critical to having a fun multi-crew experience on board a ship like that, because that gives you all that engineer gameplay that everyone loves. Then there's like other supplementary systems that really gel. Like we have docking in game. Docking is like, we have refueling. Refueling is like an advancement on the docking system that we put in game. Player-controlled ATC is a refinement on top of refueling, and you need that for like the Idris and Javelin for controlling, bringing ships in. And we want to put these ships in in game, in players' hands, when they bring a worthwhile, noticeable like gameplay to them. We don't want to just treat it as like a box ticking exercise. Go, hey, Idris is done. Shove it in game.
I think also, like, these ships are a big investment of internal art and design resources and all the other teams that it takes to kind of make a ship. And like I say, if it's all that investment is going into just making a big empty experience, it's kind of not great.
But Ben, I'm reading in chat right now from Jengalath. He says the Idris has been done for 3 years. Hasn't it been done for 3 years?
I think he's lying.
That's what Jengalath in the chat says.
Because if it is done, then great, because we can just scratch off a massive amount of time in our schedule.
Yeah. No, it is not done.
No, it's not done. Like what we've shown of it, and there is areas of the ship that look great. It is not ready to go out.
Yeah. But as John was just saying, it's not just a question of whether even if it was geometry done, it's not a question of just the geometry being done. That's not all that is involved in making a ship of that size and that scale and that play type, viable for the game. So it's not enough.
And if everyone is happy with what they've seen in game so far and they're classing that as done, then also that's cool, because that takes a lot of time off our schedule as well.
Yeah. All right, let's see. What else do we got from the... Let's go back to the chat here. Let's see. We'll do a follow-up question to that. So, we've discussed why the Polaris and the Idris, these bigger ships that folks have been waiting on for a while, they're not in the game today. They need all these other gameplay systems, all these other features to go with them in order to make them something more. And somebody said I was bashing the Connie. I'm not bashing the Connie. I love the Connie. The Connie Phoenix is like my ship. So I was saying you don't want it to just be a big version of it. You want it to be more.
Exactly, 'cause it's got a hot tub.
Oh, the groundwork has been laid for
actually, it's more
everyone
the
that comes to.
aquariums and the hot tub, personally.
Okay.
Not the bar.
And the bar.
The bar.
So there's that bit of context. So everybody's all up in arms about the Banu Merchantman. Why would they shelve it? They just effing told you. And the issue is the quote that everybody keeps going back to for their napkin math. That's a bunch of hooey. Is we'll get to that here in a second. But it's John Crew later on in this segment saying, if I could put the Polaris into production right now, it would take a significant chunk of the UK team 12 to 18 months to get it out. Okay, that's one team, but more importantly, why would they put the Polaris into production right now? There's not gameplay to support the Polaris. There's not resource.
Also, that's starting on a tile set that they don't have.
Yeah, it's starting on the Polaris, which has a little bit of shape language and stuff, but it doesn't share a whole lot with things like the Bengal or the Constellation. That's why they're doing the Galaxy, in order to pave the way for the Polaris and really the Perseus too. 70 years, totally 70 years. I'll be dead. I hope my great-grandchildren like this game, blah, blah, blah. So they don't want to add something that doesn't add to the experience. Well, the same thing applies to the BMM. The BMM is now a capital ship. It's huge. But until we have resource management, they won't have that gameplay. You also won't have resource management and resource networking and repair and all that, allowing a ship that is a capital ship to actually have the survivability that it needs in the game. Because right now, people are still soloing a hammerhead in fighters. You can't have that. You can't have that if you're going to be introducing these capital ships, and have them just be insanely vulnerable because you don't have effective multi-crew gameplay, because you don't have these systems that allow for them to have the durability that they're supposed to. Not even, and that's just the being attacked part. You with the Polaris, with the Perseus, with other ships on here, what sense does it make to bring in the Idris or the Javelin right now? There's what are you going to shoot with them? What are you going to kill with them? You don't have the gameplay. We don't have the player counts. You don't have the technology. And earlier to the quote that we just watched, they also talked about how there are technical requirements. The game doesn't perform at a place where we can have numerous player-owned capital ships running around, just absolutely tanking the frames. We still need ship interior culling for other players, who don't want to see your Idris's interior and have that, absolutely tank their frames. Luckily, we've got Gen 12 coming, but then there's Vulcan. So there's a lot of work that has to go into making the game and the gameplay, the game engine itself and the gameplay ready for ships like the Idris, ships like the Javelin, and that's just combat, But if you're looking at the big capital ships, which is what everybody's worried about, it's going to, if it takes them 12 to 18 months to make a Polaris, it's going to take them forever. Okay, the reason they haven't started working on some of these ships is because we don't have the gameplay, we don't have the mechanics. And so as we get closer to having those
stuff bigger.
Yeah. As we're getting closer to having those mechanics in game, that's when we'll see the Idris and the Javelin moving into game, when we start having things that, you actually need those to shoot at. But the other aspect of it is, just because it takes 12 to 18 months to make a ship, that's what's called flight time. If it takes a certain segment of a team, 12 to 18 months to make a ship, that doesn't mean that's the total throughput of CIG. Now, we're going to get to that quote real quick for context, so that way we can come back to the next point that we need to make about this, about why all this, back of the napkin math is so far off. Yeah. 890 jump doesn't have its gameplay loops. That's why the 890 jump, here we'll pull up this. So the 890 jump is in.
They learned from the Starfarer, their Herald, the MSR.
They actually mentioned the Starfarer as the example of why they don't want to release ships without gameplay anymore. And I got into it with Captain Burks, because he's like, oh, they didn't stop them from releasing the Starfarer. It's like, the Starfarer is a daily driver. Just because it doesn't have data running doesn't mean it doesn't have gameplay. And yeah, they want ships to have their specific gameplay, but people fly around in their Star Runner all day long. You can move cargo.
I actually will be upgrading. So I daily drive right now in game a what's it called? Nomad. And the ship I'm looking to get into off the Nomad is the MSR, because it's got the bigger vehicle bay and it's just a bit chunkier. It's got more guns on it. You can it's a lot more multiplayer friendly. So I don't even care that it doesn't have its scanning or data. It is a big Nomad for all intents and purposes. Solo, I usually fly my cutter, but when I have a team, I fly. If I have like a team of 5, I'd go straight to the Carrack. But if I have like me and 2 other people, like up to two other people, MSR is a really good one for that. You can bring 2 vehicles along. Really nice. It made sense to come in now. Now that it needs to go through a complete reconcept. They like absolutely hate where it ended up, because we need another doorway or another way to get in the ship, and and the gameplay needs to be added to the vents. That's fun.
Yeah,
we're talking about that. Also on the latest all vehicle talk. But yeah.
So let's see. I think it's here.
Making sure that I can follow the logic. Yeah, I gotcha.
Ship.
For folks talking about the Polaris, asking about the Polaris, look at the earlier questions about multi-crew and what's necessary for the big capital ships. Is there anything more you can add on the Polaris other than it needs all those other multi-crew systems first?
Same as the 600i had a full reconcept pass. Again, maybe we'll show that in a upcoming event.
Okay, but like we discussed, with all the
nothing. There are no.
Dang it, where's that quote? I'm so upset at myself for losing that timestamp. Because I had it.
it is easier to pick up a new object and build it than pick up an old object and figure out why it's broken.
Oh, there we go.
That's probably
dang it, I
why
was
they
looking at the
introduced.
wrong video.
That's probably why they.
Take.
And
if I could click my
modules
fingers now,
aren't
put the
starting with
Polaris into production.
the Galaxy. They already started. Sorry.
Okay, so here we go.
There is no one answer that applies to every ship. It is a combination of the resources we have at the time. If you take, if I could click my fingers now, put the Polaris into production, that would take out a big chunk of the UK team for maybe 12, 18 months, which means we can't deliver a constant flow of other vehicles in patches. So you could go multiple patches without any vehicle release or any support for other features coming out. So we have to balance that across not just delivering vehicles, but supporting the other teams. The last few years, we've been trying to not push vehicles out without their gameplay. So things like the Crucible, we could make the Crucible now, but we don't really want it floating around without the repair gameplay to go alongside. So whilst I can control the production of the vehicle, I have to rely and work with other directors to get their side delivered at alongside it. And the problems that affect me of, hey, we've changed our minds for IE, we want to do this instead, also affects them for other things, like the feature they're working on now might be delayed for another team, which delays the feature I need for this vehicle. So we chop and change a lot. And then also, if you have artists especially, hey, you're working on this big ship for 18 months. You don't want to put them on another big ship for 18 months afterwards. You want to break that and give them, hey, here's a nice little snub ship to do. So that's why you might see like a random ground vehicle come out from nowhere, because they are much quicker relatively to do and gives those people a nice like palette refresh of what they're doing. So yeah, we're not actively ignoring the older ships. A lot of them have gameplay consequences and gameplay requirements that I don't have an answer of when they will come online, so I can't plan developing those ships at that point.
And not for nothing.
So, like what Nazeris was talking about earlier, filler ships. John Crew just said it.
You've also been misquoted.
What?
He said a good chunk of the UK. He didn't even say the entire UK.
Yeah, that's what I've been meaning.
That's even smaller than what you've been saying.
Yeah, no, I've said a good chunk of the UK team. The UK team. The UK team is a part of the EU vehicle content team, of which they have the EU vehicle content team and the US vehicle content team. So, if he was to start, snap his fingers, start, production of the Polaris right now. Okay, the UK vehicle aspect of the team might not get out another vehicle for that 12 to 18 months. The rest of the UK team, the rest of the EU vehicle content team, the US vehicle content team could still produce ships and vehicles. So that's the difference between flight time and throughput. Flight time is it would take that many people, however many it is, from the UK team working on the Polaris, 12 to 18 months to do it. But that's the flight time for how long it takes. Not all those people are working on that ship the entire time. As we have demonstrated on our Roadmap Roundup updates using the Shiny Tracker, with the Bandit Merchantman on the Progress Tracker, it shows that 19 people were working on it, for this long sprint. That's not how it works. That means that 19 people are assigned to it over that period. But, this person works on it for a few weeks here, this person a few weeks here. It's all broken up. And so it's not 19 people the entire time. It's 19 people over the entire flight time of the production of that ship. And so these artists might come in here and work on it for a few months, and they get their part done, and then they go work on something else. So it isn't taking up that entire team for the entire 12 to 18 months. That's what everybody is getting so egregiously wrong about how this works, how the ship pipeline works, in that they think that these people are committed the entire time, and that it's, not only these people are committed the entire time, but that's all of the entire ship team, and they're entirely committed the entire time, and nothing else happens. Well, if that was the case, then how would we
Nothing
have
would
the
ever get done.
Idris? How would we have the Javelin? How would we have the Bengal? Because I know that they said a few minutes ago, okay, well the Idris isn't done. No, it's still got gameplay requirements. There's still polish work to be done. Blah blah blah. But for
They've been doing a lot of updates on the interior, specifically alongside with narrative for Squadron, and also adding in the tech that's now coming online as they finish out their tech debt. Cards was one of the
but a
things
lot
they
of
added.
that stuff is not the vehicle content team. It is not John Crew's people. That is other teams coming in and doing their work on the ships, not the people who actually produce the ship. For as far as the ship production team is concerned, the Idris is very nearly done. The last little bit, and it's stuff that they've been waiting to do because they can't do it because they've been waiting on other people. Same thing with the Javelin. Same thing with the Bengal. And the Bengal is literally big enough that you can fit every ship in the PU right now inside of it at the same time with a lot of room to spare. That is such an insane amount of digital ship tonnage. And people think that it will take 10 years to get through the backlog of capital ships when the Bengal itself is bigger than all those capital ships combined. So I don't understand how people seem to think that it would take 10 to 12 years to get through the backlog of capital ships when in the last 8 years, John Crew's team has produced the Idris, essentially 99% done. Javelin, 99% done. Bengal, 99% done.
That's not mentioning the Retribution.
I don't know if they've even touched that.
They have.
I won't speak about the Retribution because I don't know anything about that. I haven't seen shit about
I know that they have a good portion of the external geo.
Yeah. But we also know, and if you watched my video about the Squadron 42 leak, we also know that there are other capital ships, UE capital ships, in Squadron 42. We don't know what their interior is like, but if you watch them, and you'll notice, spoiler alert, it's a whole bunch of copy pasta from the Bengal. Just like they were talking about how, if you have made a corridor for Aegis, you've made all the corridors for Aegis, or nearly so. Same thing. They've taken all that work that they did for the Bengal, and they're using it to make other ships already that are absolutely massive. That's just the UEE ships. We're not even talking about the Vandal ships. So how is it possible that CIG's vehicle throughput is so limited that they couldn't get through the backlog of this backlog of ships in 10 years when they've created far more, many, many times more than what we have here of ships in just the last, 6 to 8 years with a smaller team, because CIG has continued to grow at an exponential rate over the last 10 years. So they've done an immense amount of work with, as you go back in time, fewer and fewer people on the team. And the last point to make, and I'm not going to pull it up in the report, but essentially CIG is at about 850 to 870 people right now, give or take. Well, last year's letter from the chairman mentioned that the goal was to have, it was to increase the size of the UK studio to 700 people by 2023 and 1,000 people by 2026.
According to LinkedIn, they are currently at 608.
Yeah, that's way old. The 2020 financial report shows them at like 700.
Okay, but the amount of people that are on LinkedIn is 608.
Yeah. But that's just the UK team. And that was last year when they were at like 700. So in 5 years...
Feverishly, they said they're hiring.
Yeah. The goal is in 5 years from 5 years from last year to nearly double the size of CIG, to go from 700 plus people to over 1,600. And you're like, well,
This
wait a
game
minute,
is
you
gonna
just
start moving.
wait a minute. You're like, wait a minute, you just said 700 and then 1,000 people. That's just the UK team. The UK team is right now was at like 300 or 400 people as of last year, and they wanted to add 300 more people within 3 years, and then additional 300 people within 3 years after that. That's not including the other teams. Because guess what?
I'm going to take this opportunity to drop that into the link. That's the Cloud Imperium jobs forums. If you guys have...
They're hiring like crazy. They're growing like crazy. That's just the UK team. That's not including the Germany team, which just, everybody's been talking about the UK studio. Nazeris and I did a big old thing about it, because we got super excited about it.
136 positions listed. They are hiring more than what's listed.
Yeah.
Like, you'd be shocked how much word of mouth gets you a job in the games. You probably wouldn't. A lot of word of mouth stuff gets you hired. Like, if somebody, let's say from EA, gets hired, and they had an artist or someone they really liked working for, they go up to their head like, "Hey, I know a guy who actually good at this over at EA, and he's looking for a change of pace." And they'd call him up and say, "Hey, you want a job?" And he's like, "Yeah!" And he'd jump over. Got 2 for the price of 1. That happens a lot. And Cloud Imperium Games is becoming a destination developer. Like, you hear about Sarah McLachlan going off and working with the Wipeout team, and Paul Jones going off and working with Ubisoft. Jobs they've had. Star Citizen is quickly becoming the destination dev. So they're going to be fighting to get out of other places to get into CIG.
Yeah. All the studios within CIG are growing. It's just the UK one is growing the most by percentage, but they're all growing. And so if we even take the conservative estimate based off of what they only told us about the UK studio, of them doubling in size from where they were last year, and we already know how much ship production they've done in the last 8 years from when they basically got started with things like, because the Bengal we have now is not the Bengal they showed off in 2012. They basically started all over. Yeah.
They ooh, man, did they start over.
Yeah. The Idris was just a 2D drawing at that point. The Javelin didn't even exist.
Did they start in 2016, do you know? When they started over?
Oh, with the ship production, not the ship production isn't that is farther back than that, but
okay.
Yeah, the overall concept adjusted in 2015. But all this is meant to lay out why the simple, John Crew said 12 to 18 months. You multiply that by
for a
10
specific
ships. Yeah, for a very specific ship that doesn't have a lot of design language yet for it, which we're getting soon with the Galaxy if leaks.
Which is a smaller ship. It'll take less time.
Yeah. It is not simple table napkin math to try to say, there's 10 ships that need to be done. It takes 12 to 18 months to make a capital ship, so therefore it must take 10 to 12 years to get that done. That's not how flight time and throughput works. We explained why that's only a portion of their ship development team. We explained why that's only talking about a portion of that team working for those 12 to 18 months. It's people coming and going out of that vehicle sprint. We explain why they've already made a way more ship than that prior to this point already. We just don't have access to it. We just can't see it yet. We get hints and tidbits, but we know it's there. And we know that CIG is growing by leaps and bounds. So there is absolutely zero reason to believe the estimates that people are coming up with of a decade plus to get caught up on the ship backlog. There's no reason. With the gameplay coming online, removing the obstructions that John Crew was telling us about just in the last couple clips we've watched, where Gen 12 and Vulcan are going to be out of the way. So, and with those out of the way, they can get the ship interior culling done. So that way it doesn't tank your frames. So that obstacle is going to be out of the way. Resource management, go look at the progress tracker right now. They are balls to the wall on resource management right now. And a lot of the ships have been built in the last 4 or 5 years with resource management in mind. So that way the refactor, in order to incorporate that system into those ships, is not nearly as heavy as people think. It isn't a giant refactor for every ship. The older,
and it will
older
be
ships
mostly
will take more
done
work.
by March.
Yeah. The older ships will take more work to refactor to bring it in. But the majority of the ships have been since 2018 and don't require a ton of work to bring them up to that standard. That's being done. They're working on the damage gameplay. They're working on server meshing so that way we get higher player counts and more NPCs, so we have targets for those, combat related ships. And eventually they're going to, get to the gameplay for the civilian ships as well. But like John said, there's no reason to make the Pioneer. There's no reason to make the Orion, the whole D, whole E, even, the whole C is done, but we don't have the gameplay for it. They'll make those ships. They'll go into production as they're getting closer to releasing the gameplay for them. It is absolutely ludicrous to think that just because we don't know exactly what the plan is, that there isn't a plan. This is a giant company with a whole bunch of people, and John Crew, his whole job, he's the vehicle pipeline director. He manages this for all the vehicles that need to get made, and he manages it based off of the priorities associated with the gameplay and the mechanics and the actual engine supporting those vehicles. But yeah, getting through this backlog is not going to take 10, 12 years. I don't think it'll even take 6 to 8 years.
Nope. I was about to say this. If tech wasn't the issue, they could get through in 5. Easy.
Yeah. Yep. And a lot of people will be like, "Oh, you're just a white knight." And it's like, no, I read the information. I go through the entire quote. I put things into context. I take all the bits and pieces of information that are part of what this equation should be, because this is not third grade math. 10 times 12 must equal 120. 10 times 12 must equal 12 years. That's 10 years, 12 years. This is not a third grade math problem. This is a multifactorial, a complex thing, and you have to look at all the factors that go into that. And that's what we were just trying to illustrate as to why they haven't built these ships already, what ships they've produced already to demonstrate what their actual throughput is like and has been like over the last 8 years. Because all the Squadron 42 ships is not including all the things that we already have. They have accomplished so much, but we don't, we take it for granted because all we see are these guys. The ships that are released.
And I just want to point this out just because it is kind of also a good words. What are the words? Barometer? Not barometer. That's the wrong. How much people actually care about this backlog? We have dwarfed every month previous years. We, the company, whatever. CIG has dwarfed every month in previous years for funding. They have released more concept sales all year, and they haven't changed. They haven't done a ton of work, ton of ships. They've released more new ships this year that weren't on there. and yet we're first time in the entire 10 years of development, over 100 million made in 1 year, and we still have to go. So people are still going to buy ships. This game's still going to be going well. Like, it's people whining, complaining, throwing themselves on the floor and a puddle of their own tears over this backlog is ridiculous, and it's not indicative of the game's health at all. The game is doing much better than it's ever had before, and will continue to get better. The only way that this fails right now is they stop working on it. Even like if heads were to leave, it could still coast, and then they find new heads. Like there have been so many systems that they've talked about, systems in place in the company to make sure that everyone has their authority over what they are doing. So they have enough money to finish the game, and they have more money on top of that. So the game is going to keep getting more stuff in it. So once they have the ball rolling for stuff that we have, they'll make more tracks for more balls to roll. So we have not only the Endeavor gameplay, but also whatever comes next, city gameplay. Maybe we'll have like a city street ability if the game gets well funded enough. Like they'll map out all the streets. Who knows? This Star Citizen has done something everyone was scared to do, and they made it the most funded, longest developed, most highest detailed at the largest scale game. Not any one of those things, but all of those things. So it's an experiment that has gone so right. And complaining that they're not building your digital spaceships fast enough is an interesting take to have. Very interesting take to have. Also, like, as we've been talking about, it's not going to take them 10 years. Remember, they built the Aurora, the original Aurora, with like 30 people in the company. And not all 30 people were working on that spaceship. A lot of them were working on the engine and the planet tech and the graphics and all this other stuff. So, like, 5 people built the Aurora and the Constellation and the original Tally. We now have near, if not, what was the head count end of last year? Was there over 1,000 yet?
Well, no, there was a quote earlier this year where one of the people at CIG said, I think it was Jake said 870 people at CIG.
870
in the last couple months.
Love hearing these. 2071 will be Star Citizen release date or something. The problem is nobody can actually give you a definite answer because it's mostly feel and opinion at this point. But Star Citizen is released. People play it. Thousands of people play it every day.
The biggest issue is the ships on the top half up here that were concepted before the game changed drastically. Because, take the Idris off the equation, take the, Idris here, the Javelin, the Retaliator, Lynx is in production, you're left with, and take the hulls off because the Hull C is done and it will not, done for all intents and purposes. And so making the BDE is not a big deal. Polaris is reconcept finished. So we're just waiting for production time. So not a big deal. So you're left with the Merchantman, the Orion, the Crucible, Endeavor, and Genesis. None of these ships have gameplay.
BD is just scaling up. Yeah.
None
the B is a scaled down C and a scaled up A, which they already had probably 50% of the Geo done. Because just taking parts from those two ships. D is more C. And then once you have D, you can just have more to make the E. Like, there is a little bit of geo you have to make, not just scale drag, because the windows have to be similar size, the chairs have to be similar size. So there is a little more geo, but you can take bits. They don't just make ship. They make a corridor ring, or a staircase, a floor texture, a wall piece, a seat. And those things, just, that's what they use to get them. I don't think I'd ever need something as big as an E. I want to fly an E, because the E is going to be the thing that you like track across the entire empire to deliver things. It's pick up stuff, let's say Stanton, and deliver it to Seoul. That's what the E's for.
Without the other. So we just went through the concepts, the status of each one of these ships, and with each one of these ships, we talked about what, okay, this is the information, of what a lot of them, why they were going to be in production and then they weren't. And so almost, I can't literally, almost every single one of these ships has a very good reason why it hasn't been put into production yet. And the least of them is that it doesn't add anything to the game, so why would we work on it? The capital ships, we know why the capital ships, they either don't have the gameplay, they don't have the function, the servers and the engine won't support them just yet. We're almost there. Lynx going into production, the Santokai going into production, the SRV is in production, the Spirit is in production. We don't have refining gameplay, so why work on the Expanse? We don't have refining, it's every single one of these. You can go down through here and be like, oh, okay, yeah, there's a good reason why they haven't prioritized this.
So Blood Tide, they already have made a ship with an inboard tram. It's the Bengal. They have it already. They've done it already. Tech is done for onboard tram.
The only things that
no problem
they could easily work on, and are filler ships, which John Crew talked about this. As we were talking this evening, there are fillers, and those are the only ones that don't have a legitimate hard reason of why they haven't been worked on. It's only that, okay, we haven't had the filler space to work on it. Well, the X1 is on the progress tracker. The G12 will probably end up as a filler soon. They've got to work on the two-wheeled vehicle physics, for the Ranger. But those are all fillers.
And UTV.
UTV is a filler. The PTV.
And
gold
we've
standard.
gotten a good amount of filler ships this year.
Yeah. And the Spirit is getting worked on. So.
What was the latest on that? Ships spawning ships.
Oh.
That was much sooner than the Kraken.
Yeah.
That was like Carrot.
They have mentioned that
on and off.
In on and off, and that's actually a really good question for us to look into for a Spectrum Pulse.
Nice.
Or at least a sit rep or something like that.
Yeah.
Write that down.
Yeah. So people should not be so down on how many ships we have, and be more down on why aren't they getting the tech in?
Yeah.
Even though they shouldn't not be down on that, because the amount of tech they're getting in on the scale they're doing it is unprecedented.
Yeah. If you go back and look at the tech blockers and the gameplay blockers, you can see that they're working on those things, and they're well into production, and we are far closer to the end than we are the beginning on each of the tech blockers, on each of the gameplay blockers. Yeah. So yeah, I hope everyone has found this diatribe on the vehicle pipeline and why the estimates of how long it will take to get through the vehicle backlog are likely to be wildly off base.
Yeah, not to mention, there's a lot more ships. I wouldn't be surprised if there were twice as many ships as this photo had.
Oh yeah, the amount of ships that they have planned. There's probably a ton more that are already concepted that they're just drip feeding. But
we have like the leaked ones that you saw. We had the Mule Crane. We have the enemy ships that they worked on, which we know there's a Freelancer, a Cutlass, and something else.
they've probably gone through the design briefs of countless ships.
Oh yeah.
Just okay, we have this, and this idea. We'll come back and concept them
Mule
later.
giraffe.
And that's what the vehicle
Wouldn't it
concept
just be giraffe?
are going through.
Yeah.
But yeah, I hope.
Yeah, these
it's
are just the
midnight.
concept they've released.
Yeah, it's midnight here for me, and I have to be up early with my son, and it's 2 a.m. for you. So we'll wrap this up. But I hope you guys found this informative. I know that we kind of rambled a little bit on this last segment, but I hope that the information that we presented provided some good context, so that way when you see these things out in the community, you're like, that's a bunch of bullshit. That's so far off base. And the information, the links will be in the show notes, so that way you can go back and listen to these quotes, and share them with people, so that way when they they quote the thing, 12 to 18 months, no, that's not what that says. Here's what it says. Here's what it actually says. No, that's not why they're not working on this ship. Here's what John Crew actually said for why they're not working on these ships, why they're not working on the capital ships. There's a whole bunch of different things, and I hope we've been able to shed a little light and put these things into better context. I think that everybody who's here is probably a bit more on the level-headed side of the spectrum, except for maybe Blizzrad. You should see the things that he posts about Tavarin in my Discord.
I don't want to. I don't want to know what anyone
Yeah.
Tavarin. I am so scared of the human race.
He's a bloody madman. But yeah, we've got 10 people hanging out with us, and I just want to say thank you guys for joining us this evening and hanging out with Nazeris and I.
Do you think we should shoot for next Tuesday?
Oh, calendar. Here, hold on. I need to open up. We'll put this over.
Oh, my phone's
here.
dead. I can't even look.
So, Gmail, before we sign off.
Nope.
Next Tuesday is actually probably pretty good for me. If you want to do it. Oh, is today Wednesday?
Yeah.
Oh, it's Wednesday now because we've been going for so long. We started on Tuesday.
Yes.
Man. Tuesday actually probably works pretty good for me because my wife is working during the day. So we can get started after I've put Junior to bed. Blah.
Well, days are weird.
Yeah. But yeah, we got another sub. We reached our $200 goal for stackup.org. We shared a lot of good information. This has been our
4
longest
hours
episode, I think, but it'll be good because when we break up these segments, they'll probably each be like an hour and a half
30,
or
40
so.
minutes, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks again. And Nasus, do you have anything to add before you sign us off?
I am trying to make YouTube more of a job. So
say
I
we all.
assume much more of a job. I would like nothing more than to not work at the current job I have through the next holiday season. I am not doing well mentally when I go to work, so that's my plan, is to make YouTube work for me. With that said, I am implementing more videos onto my channel, finishing up the projects I have now, and I will be doing Space Engineers mod showcases every week. I'll be doing a let's play series in Space Engineers. I still have a build series going, and we'll be getting back to Star Citizen Atomic videos. It's going to start out much like Minion Soldier does his, hopefully with a bit more the videos in the background instead of random captured gameplay, and much more how Newifier and Board does theirs with the videos in the background. So that's the plan. I think I have plenty of stuff to work with for Star Citizen. I'll go over all the panels and the ships and give my opinions on those. So that is what's coming on my YouTube. I don't have a link for it, but I get it. So I'm just trying to waste time talking about absolutely nothing as I go and remember where exactly all of my stuff went. I don't have all of my stuff. I have to go find it. So there we go. Oh, I do. Oh, it's just YouTube at there. Yeah, that's the easy one. There you go. That's the link to it. If you guys are interested in Space Engineers and or Star Citizen stuff for video content, shorter, more opinionated stuff. Also, the mod showcase for this week actually has 3 different Star Citizen mods in it for Space Engineers. So that will be done by the end of the week, and I plan to have the next one out on Wednesday. Just so much stuff happened today. With OBS deciding it wasn't going to do half the crap I wrote. It was fine. So that's what I got. Again, I like to see a lot of people here. It's really fun to interact with you guys. It really livens up the show. So thanks so much, Shownotes. That's what I got.
Sweet. Well, thanks again, and yeah, let's call it a night. Nazareth, do your thing, bud.
All right. Thank you again, everyone, for showing up. It means a lot to us, and it makes our job so much more. And I hope that we not only entertained, but and didn't rant too much. If you guys think we ranted too much, you know where to find us and yell at us. Those in the comments, please post a comment, like it. Thank you everyone for coming. It's been fun. Good night and be kind.